Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Women in Vinyl podcast. My name is L'Oreal Porcia McCollum, and I am today's guest host. A little bit about me. I am a vinyl DJ. I'm a therapist and healing artist, as well as the former director of culture for Women in Vinyl. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here in this capacity to share my enthusiasm for this work and the guests that I have with me today. Today's conversation, we're going to explore a little bit about records as personal and cultural archives, the role that libraries play in preserving music history, and why physical media still matters, right? So today I am joined by Jane Lippman and Suzanna Urminska from the Free Library of Philadelphia. Two folks who are no doubt going to share so much with us about why all this is important. And so I'm going to just turn it over to you two, whomever would love to start. Can you each introduce yourselves and tell us what you do at the Free Library of Philadelphia?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, my name's Jane Lippman. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Vinyl Record Collections Librarian at the Music Department at the Free Library of Philadelphia.
And I'm Suzanna Urminska. She, her is fine. And I am currently the Curator of Exhibitions here at the Free Library, where I've been for about 2 decades now.
Amazing. I love that so much. Yeah, you've been putting in some work for sure. And both of you, I would love to know, how did you find your way into this work? I mean, it's not every day. I mean, I have said to you both in previous conversations about, like libraries have been preserving a lot of this like physical media history through books and other media for a long time. But there's been a lot of shine recently on your department as well, which is very exciting for me as a former Philadelphian to see that happening. But I would love to know, like, how did you find your way into this work?
Sure, I'll go first. So I've been at the library a lot less for a much shorter time than Susanna. Initially, I'd been working in book selling once I got out of undergrad. And then I realized I was more aligned with librarianship. And then when I was in library school, it was kind of like the very start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that kind of like shifted my trajectory of where I was going to end up within the field from more like academic librarianship, working with metadata, to like, oh no, actually public service is more for me. And then I've been with the Free Library of Philadelphia since about 2023 in February as a music librarian. And then I've been working more with vinyl records since about January of 2025.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like I've been in Philly since I was 18, and I come from a family of people with creative practice of all kinds. And, when you're growing up, you just kind of take whatever's around you as like the norm. So it wasn't just at home that there was a lot of creative practice, but there was creative practice all around me. And then honestly, the library was in some ways an antithesis to that. It was quiet. It was really strict. There was air conditioning, which a lot of us did not have growing up. And it honestly, and I share this because I think this is a common experience for a lot of us, it wasn't a very welcoming space. It was a space where like rules were to be followed, even if they were not necessarily like articulated. And so for me, when I became a librarian, which was just a way to sort of like what Jane was sharing, think about like how to be in a public space. I had thought that I would end up in museums, but for me, like public libraries is where it's at because I really care about people and I really care about the stewardship of public space. Mm-hmm. And so in that stewardship, I love being able to think through like how to reverse some of those experiences that I had growing up and really think about this space as like vibrant, this space as a space that we can define not just as staff and as library workers, but also in collaboration with the people that we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really inspirational to see the work that Jane's been doing, because it's such a reminder of like how that is possible and also how we all can do it differently. And that's like a really important piece for me, is that we're all going to do it a different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you also kind of illuminating the just this idea also of like this many ideas that you just brought up about the library. And I kind of reflect back on work that I did in the city around mental health. And there was so much that we were doing actually with the main library because of the space that has been held for people of all different backgrounds, of all different socioeconomic, conditions, and it being a safer space. So just, and I'm getting chills thinking about it because of the work that you're doing as well around like music, physical media, stuff like that, and just like how much that is, be a safer space for people. So it's just like I'm kind of thinking about the overlap of around that as a structure and how it's held space for people, and then also just like the work that you're doing, and what that does, that how the invitation, it invites people to engage with something that can light them up, and also celebrates them and their humanness. And I really really feel that, and I really appreciate that aspect for sure, of the work that you do, that I think doesn't get us seen as much as well, because you're holding space in a variety of ways, at libraries. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's really one of the few resourced, staffed, climate controlled public spaces that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's both can be a challenge in terms of like what that means to steward, but it also creates sort of endless possibilities.
Yeah.
Because we can just keep iterating
Mm-hmm.
and keep determining what we want that to look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess digging into this, like the work that you're doing around like the collection, and I would love to know, because I big nerd. I think Susanna, who I've known you for some years now, knows this about me. Is I love knowing. I'm like, ooh, what kind of lights you up? What are the records, the music, the media that, like, what are you into? I'm wondering, was there a record or a discovery that like really pulled you in, like at the, your facility?
It's a multifaceted answer.
Yes, here
so
for
so
it.
there's I have the record that brought me into like our collection here at the library, and also a record from home that's like my earliest vinyl memory when I was maybe 3 or 4.
Love it.
All right, so Mark Shreve's Assassin
Okay.
came out in 1984. It's some 1980s weird synth stuff. But like with the cover, when I remember listening to it with my dad, I was just envisioning this like gigantic skeleton hunting me through the woods, which like with some of the sound elements in it, you sound like it sounds like there's footsteps.
Yes.
And so like that just always stuck with me as one of my earliest memories. And when I was getting back into records, like myself as an individual in my later teens, that's like where I picked up, was I re-listened to that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the library collection, let's say, this like also answers one of your later questions, but Wendy Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is Sonic Seasonings, but all of her work is really, really cool electronic work from like starting in the 60s. And I just kind of like went down a rabbit hole of like, oh, what's this? Who's this
Yeah.
artist? Oh, this is so cool. Wait, what? This computer rooms in the 60s were making music? What? What? So that was like my first step into the library's collection, was like, wait, what? We have this whole Columbia Princeton record collection. What?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I love Sonic seasonings.
Seasonings. Yes. Yes. I'm like, what are we seasoning?
Exactly. And so it
Yeah.
was the artwork. I mean, that anyone who all
It
of us
was the
lovers of
artwork.
vinyl, you're like,
Yes.
and
I was
some of
like,
us
there's
are,
something happening here. It's interesting. I'll bring it to a program and have a listen.
yeah, yeah. And
And I
some
did.
of us
It's
have
great.
gotten really good at like, it's like, if it looks weird, it's likely it's going to be like right up my alley. Like I just like, you've gotten so good at like, I know that this is gonna align with something in me. So that's so cool. Love that. Yeah. What about you, Susanna?
Yeah, so growing up, my mom was really like the audiophile in our home, followed by like a close second, my older brother. So again, with that mindset of just like what you grow up is sort of like normalized, there was always music playing in one of their spaces. My brother was like a huge math nerd and has continued that path on that path to this day. So I remember listening to like Pink Floyd and Prince, and in fact, like we got to go to a Prince show together
Oh my gosh.
some years back, just like those kind of quintessential memories. And he's almost 10 years older than me, so it was like really special to have this older sibling that I could just like hunker down in his room when he was a teenager and just like soak it in. And then on the opposite side of the wall, in this like split level house that we had, Section 8 housing, my mom had this kind of like garage space that she ran a business out of. She did art restoration and conservation.
Mhm.
And she really loved like spiritual jazz, classical music. And she was herself this very kind of like privately spiritual person. And for her, doing that type of fine handiwork of like literally like restoring gold leaf or like taking a piece of paper that had aged in like tropical, subtropical conditions and bringing it back to life so that the aging process was kind of reversed in some kind of way. She was doing all of this with this like soundtrack in the background. And how we got a lot of those records was by going to library sales. So like
Amazing.
sometimes you don't see this as much anymore. Some of our branch libraries do this where it's like where I grew up, every year the Friends of the public library there would have these sales where it would be like rows and rows of empty liquor boxes, and then for like $1 you could fill them up. And so I don't remember us having a circulating or even non-circulating record collection at the library, but I do remember the donations that would come in for these sales would include a lot of people's record collections.
Yes.
And so we, at one time, actually lived across the street from the library. And so we would just like all of us, no matter how young you were, you'd walk across the street with your liquor box full of
Oh my gosh.
records. And then it was just this whole world, right? And it wasn't just music, it was plays, comedy, like we've talked about this, like nature, sort of like scientific nature recordings.
Yeah.
It was this whole
Non-music albums.
world. Like I just remember listening to things and then either watching my brother nerd out in math or my mom do this like very fine, tedious work, like often late into the hours, but she always let me stay up. And just, yeah, it was such a visceral experience that I hold to this day. And I love that vinyl can have that staying power, not just in terms of memory, but like that at home I still have some of those physical records that I listened to all those years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
I love, personally as someone who has DJ'd for years now, and I think I get the most excited about like records that I've gotten that are like the dollar record that I just like picked up, somewhere, and then people are like going wild over it, and I'm like, boo, this was $1. Like it was, there's like gems galore. You just never know. Like you might find it at your local library. It's like, you might find it just like out on the street somewhere, and it's just like, there's so many avenues for like getting fed by like, these records or this music. There's so many different outlets, but it's so great to think about or reconsider like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, libraries. But yeah, who has that kind of feature anymore, really, where you're like doing like those sales? And I'm so curious about that. Like very, very cool.
Well, I mean,
Um,
Jane's kind of doing the reverse, right? Like you're rebuilding the collection that everyone can continue to use here
Yeah.
and beyond.
Yeah. If instead of like giving away the records, I'm kind of like, cool, how can we like preserve, maintain, and
mhm.
like possibly even circulate and check out these records to the
Yeah.
public?
Absolutely. Well, that leads me to like my next question, like for someone who's never explored a musical, library, what might surprise them about like what's actually like in the collection or even thoughts that you might have about like how to, like how you're intending to build the collection, even more than you already have. Yeah.
Sure. So if you haven't visited the music department or the Free Library of Philadelphia, all physical music media we have CDs and we have vinyl records. You can borrow CDs, and right now you cannot borrow vinyl records. Vinyl records are exclusively in the music department at Parkway Central, and CDs can be at any of our 54 locations, and you can place holds on them, send them across the library system. Uh, Within the vinyl collection, what I find like exciting is that like the history of it.
Mhm.
So we stopped purchasing vinyl in the late 1980s and just like fully swapped to buying CDs because they were more affordable.
Right.
Um, but we never got rid of the vinyl collection. It's all still here. So, but the workers who were working at that time aren't here.
Mhm.
So we're kind of just like, oh, what's in here? Why do we have like so much of this genre but not that genre? Why do
Yeah.
we have so much of this specific artist? Who was purchasing the records? Were they donations? Um, and kind of just like finding neat like treasures within the collection.
Mhm.
Right. So we mainly have opera, classical music, and jazz, but we have like a kind of cool soundtrack section that has a lot of horror films in it. And I'm like, so who was the horror movie buff who was getting all these horror records?
Yes.
And they're really cool. And then within the electronic, like experimental computer music, there's a lot of, I think it's Isao Tomita records. And he was this Japanese composer doing really cool electronic music.
Mm.
And we have a lot of his stuff, but the rest of it is like a lot of compilations. So I'm like, who really liked him?
Yeah.
Like not that his stuff isn't great, but who was really into it and made sure that we had it on hand.
Yeah.
And so just kind of looking at it from that perspective, whereas like if you're a store or if it's a personal collection, you mainly have things that you like or that um, your patrons that you currently have, your customers would like. But in the library, it's an inherited collection,
Hmm.
right? And it's still living where like people can use it. You can come in and we have listening stations and you can listen to the records all day. But we haven't been purchasing them. So it's how do you relate to older music?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, why is something interesting to you? Why is something not interesting to you?
Yeah.
And just, it's like a fun sandbox to explore in.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
can just add, like that interpretation piece when it comes to curation, I think is often sort of de-emphasized, but I love these questions that you're asking of the collection
Right.
because I think it puts front and center the fact that like interpretation is not neutral. I mean, you've shared with me like the massive gaps that you see in the collection and the
Yeah.
work that needs to be done to even just have like Philadelphia music legends like properly
Yeah.
represented in the collection. But
Hmm.
all of that just to say that interpretation I think is always present even when it is de-emphasized, and it all in many ways kind of comes back to lived experience, which I would also include, academic training and all of that, but just the the ways that those lived experiences shape you in turn undeniably shape the collection that you're helping to build. But it's living as well. So, there's this chance to
So hopefully
reshape
it'll
it.
grow and we can mend the gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were asking those questions that, Susanna just referred to around, like who was it that was so curious or so interested? And have you been able to fill in any of those gaps?
Not specifically to individuals.
Yeah.
I did uncover like this really cool, let me see, it's behind me over here on the desk.
Oh, it's amazing.
I
There's
love
this
this behind
really
the scenes,
cool,
like what's happening behind.
right? It's this is just like a second work desk behind me.
Yeah.
So there's this cool, really old composition notebook. The spine is completely gone, so it's just like page by page. But it's like the purchasing history of the vinyl, which at that point they were calling phonograph record statistics. And there's like crossed out names of workers on it.
Which is what you would do in a composition notebook, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
Right. But like you can flip through it and you can see like when we were getting gifts. Let's see. This page was April, and it says that like we got our first like 100 something records for the circulating collection in April of I think 1956.
Oh, okay.
Right? And before I found this, we knew that we were checking records out, but we weren't sure exactly when it started, right? Like we heard, oh, it was the 60s sometime.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure really when it ended either. And I think we thought it ended still in the 60s, but I found in a different record, this was a copy of the Beach Boys, but they were circulating still in 1981 in a branch.
Yeah.
And I just found it because it was tucked in the back of the record.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, so for possibly like over more than 20 years, we were checking records out. And it's just like happening to find stuff in old filing cabinets and being like, oh, wait, this is really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be still my nerdy heart. Love that.
Yes.
It's like just like, oh, and there's this and this came from, and you made me think about like these Susanna, you mentioned like the Philly history, and that I cannot speak more about that and just the ways how specifically the roots of music with soul but disco, and how with New York gets so much of the credit around that, and Philly, it is very clear, had the origin stories might be a little bit more revisionist. And so, it makes me think about the library as, very, very important for being able to tell those stories as well and help people to understand like those sort of, details about just like how powerful and just groundbreaking the city was with music at such a, for decades, in genres that continue to live on around the world. And so it makes me think about like some of the events that you all have been also hosting. Like I'm curious about like, have there been any ones recently that you've had that where you were just like so excited to be a part of?
You want to talk about club?
Sure.
And then I have one as well.
Sure. I do two kind of record style events in the music department. The first is Library Mixtape. It's my once a month, like we meet the last Wednesday of the month from 5:30 to 7:30. There's a different theme every month, and we kind of just get together and listen to records that are supported by that theme.
Yeah.
So this month we listened to Philly 250 Tell It Slant was the theme. And it was like very bring your own focused. So I asked folks to bring records from artists whose rights would have been under suppression in 1776 or today in 2026. And people brought a lot of really neat records. There was like a Malcolm X recording. There was, who was it?
I wasn't able to
You
come.
weren't there.
I know.
Oh
It's so
no, I
sad.
know. This is terrible. Let me say.
Ah,
I'm gonna
do you have
open
the
a browser
playlist?
and no, I don't have a playlist. Gil Scott Heron.
Yes.
Oh,
All right, so we had some Gil Scott Heron and Malcolm X, and let's see.
and those were people bringing from their
And it
own
was people
personal
bringing them in from their
collections.
personal collections to share in community with other listeners, because vinyl can be a very isolating experience where you're just at home listening on headphones on your system with like maybe your friends or your family, but maybe not. Um, and like it can also just help to discuss records with people, because if you don't have that community, like how do you round out your own thoughts about records? How mindfully are you listening? Right? So people came in, they shared some really great stuff. Next month we're going to be listening to some 1980s MTV records. We have a regular patron, George, who he worked at MTV in the 80s, and
Yes.
he's going to be bringing some music for us to listen to from his personal collection, and we're all really excited. Yeah. But so that's Club. We were just nominated for Best of Philly's 2026 prize for Best Analog Joy, which was so cute.
Such a
It
cute
was so
category.
fun. Right? Like, I love that they invent the categories.
Yeah.
I was researching, I was like, how did this happen? How do you win Best of Philly? And it was like, oh, an editor says that it's important, right? Like, you don't vote. Like, they have voting categories, but mainly it's somebody has been to the event and said that it was notable and cool. So I was like, oh wow, somebody came and saw Club and thought it was important. That's so great.
Yeah.
And then I'm also doing DIY discs, cut your own vinyl record workshops. And that's with Joe and Katie from Consonant Collective. They make lathe cut vinyl records. And so people can come to the library with an MP3 file and put it on a 7-inch record and like decorate their own album sleeve and then take home like a unique one of a kind record that they made at the library.
That's so killer. I know before I left Philly, I checked in on that event. I think several times. I'm like, oh, sold
Oh
out, sold out.
no. Yeah. I had a lot of initial interest, so we were like pre-booked.
So good
But that's how I met Foxy, which
Yeah.
is how she ended up DJing here, which I think is how I guess we've met you and come
Yeah.
across your radar.
Yeah.
So cool.
Shouts out to fellow DJ Foxy Nora. Yeah, and who, like you said, did an event with y'all not too long ago. And so, yeah, no, so exciting to see that because, there's so many people who their experience with music has only ever been digital. And so streaming, whatever. And so then you are inviting them into this experience of like the analog joy, in this way that is not just for them to kind of tap into it individually, but like in community, like you said, like it's so important. It's like, because that's like where the healing also is, like that we heal in communities. And so and music is such a critical, I think, that's glue, that connective tissue that there. So beautiful to hear that. And I know Susanna, you had an event
Yeah.
that you were also thinking
Yeah,
about.
and also just to say, like, there's this really beautiful blossoming happening right now where it's like Doriana Diaz, who I had the pleasure of working with on an exhibit some years back. She came in and guest curated. She has Soulfly Club up on Germantown Avenue, also doing these like listening sessions. So it's like a beautiful thing, like where, you know, every night of the week potentially there's some sort of event like this sort of like opportunity to, like you're sharing, build community, but also do it in this kind of shared space with a shared idea of just like curiosity. um Another person that's been doing events and actually they're a frequent library patron, Alexa Colas, opened up a space on the 900 block of East Market as part of like the Philly 250 kind of reactivation of spaces that were kind of underutilized or on pause in one way or another. And I mean, interestingly, not being from Philly, I'm always like, tell me the stories. And so I've been hearing about how like that same block or maybe one block towards City Hall used to have like this huge record store that's now, you
Mhm.
know, long shuttered. Um, but Alexa's approach is, you know, this sort of idea of like moments that move her with this emphasis on vinyl, this emphasis on like slowing down.
Mhm.
And she was able to do this multi-part project with King Britt,
Mhm.
who's out in UC San Diego now, but from Philly.
Mhm.
And he came really as a homecoming and did these like multi-night sessions where he curated as part of this larger Blacktronica
Mhm.
project that both exists in like curricular academic form, but is also going to exist next year in an exhibit at the African American Museum in Philadelphia, right here. So those evening sessions were always followed by these noontime conversations that Alexa would kind of host, and I think one thing that's kind of cool to see her in action is she's again that level of curiosity is
Mhm.
like constantly firing. So she's like, you know, making these connections that, you know, I think for a lot of younger generations, like they're looking to King Britt because they like what they hear, but they don't know that history that he lived. And so then being able to have him like hold court
Mhm.
and tell these stories in ways that are like really beautiful, really generous. Um, and then also to, you know, have this kind of homecoming, like I shared earlier, about just being able to bring this back to Philly. So every of those noontime sessions, Jane was kind enough to allow me to bring materials from the library. So I was bringing in like books from the 1950s that were like, here's how to incorporate, you know, electronic music into the classroom for like K to 12, or,
Mhm.
you know, like I actually didn't find these records in time, but like Don Cherry,
Yes.
you know, we have all this like incredible stuff that, you know, it's how many records do you have right now approximately?
About 30,000.
So, and it's, you
Wow.
know, some of
Yeah.
it's you know, in the process of getting cataloged. So it was just a beautiful thing to be able to bring in um different types of vinyl that we have in our collection. And, you know, because he's the scholar that he is, it was just like synapse firing every moment.
Yeah.
So some of those records that we brought in, we were able to like play as part of those conversations. But now we're also kind of thinking through like, all right, well, when that Blacktronica exhibit comes to Philadelphia, could there be a way that we do like an accompanying display here at the library, maybe programming around that? Because
Mhm.
what happened this summer in Philadelphia with King Britt was like definitely just the reignition of something that's like been burning for a long time. So
Mhm.
it's exciting to think about like what we can continue to do. And that's just like an example of like, I guess in libraries we would call that like outreach, but for me
Mhm.
it was like I just, you know, took a little walk and brought a bunch of records with me and got to see what happened, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, I got some of the stories on the other end of all of those different events from just like different homies that I have who were either part of those events or like attended, and like I get chills thinking about it. It's like, oh, that like the synergy and like just like the just the ways that I think people felt that they came alive with you know, by participating in those. And I love like you mentioned, like this the curricular aspect of it, but it's also like the community connection aspect of it. And I mean, that's, you know, music can be both of those things, contains multitudes. It's dynamic. And so and to know of, you know, King Britt's history in Philly, and like, you know, having left, but then bringing it back. Like, you know, always just like, let me bring this back home. Let me, you know, like, let me include my people. So it's like so gorgeous to hear that. And, you know, it makes me think about also, you know, what physical music media like tells us, or what can tell us that we lose when we are only experiencing like the music through streaming. I wonder your kind of thoughts about that. I certainly have thoughts about that, but I'd love to know kind of like what you were thinking.
I wrote up a lot of thoughts about that.
Hell yes.
All right. Uh, it's so rough. My favorite part of physical media is like how it's presented and all of the things that you get besides just the music
Mhm.
or whatever's on a record.
Mhm.
So you get the dust jacket, you get the liner notes, you're having a multi-sensory experience with like how does it smell, how does it feel, as well
Mhm.
as what do you hear. And when you're just stream, I stream, I'm
Mhm.
not like kicking streaming down. But when you stream, you're maybe getting the song or a podcast or whatever it is, and maybe some lyrics. And if you're watching like a video podcast, maybe there's a video, but you're not getting like an intentionally curated experience.
Mhm.
Whereas when you're getting a physical record, especially like depending on the genre, if you're getting a opera record, they have the libretti in there, and
Mhm.
that'll have like an English language translation. And
Mhm.
so it actually makes what you're listening to accessible for a lot of people
Mhm.
who don't speak another language other than English. And so suddenly it's like, oh, you can actually listen to the opera and follow along.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're just streaming it, the the subtitles that it's going to give you, the lyrics are going to be in Italian, and you're
Mhm.
still not going to know what's happening
Mhm.
unless you speak Italian. Uh, but also, sometimes it's unrelated, and it's just like presenting more of a history of what's happening, like in a time that coincides with a record. So, for Club, just presented part of a folk music series released by the Library of Congress, and it was Songs of Immigration and Travel, I
Mhm.
think. And it was released for the bicentennial in 1976. And so it was like a focused history of the music of that period and what they felt was important with like historical context and author and musician bios, and because it was a compilation. So it's kind of walking you through what's happening on the record, and
Mhm.
you don't get that if you're streaming it. And sometimes maybe it's not even accessible to stream, especially if it's something more rare or localized, it's just not online.
Mhm. Very real. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
I
Yeah.
also think like because we probably between the three of us know some people that like to buy records, right? Like
Yeah.
serious like record digging,
Yes.
but really like that tactile experience is not much different here. Like
Mhm.
when I was picking out these albums yesterday for today's conversation, it was like, oh, okay, well I could go into the catalog um and actually write like the card catalog or the digital catalog because it's kind of in between, which I love.
Yeah.
But I just opted to just go straight to browsing, which has always been my like truest like form of like satiating my curiosity.
I will say it's not a highly browsable collection,
Yeah.
but you managed.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, if the curiosity's there, then like you find a way. And I think with the digital stuff, like I definitely use it for convenience, but it doesn't have that same like immersive
Mhm.
quality. And then I think about just like, so because Jane is willing to take donations, I actually bought a vinyl recently that should be arriving soon because I want to donate it to the collection. and
Thank you.
and in part it's because of the Philadelphia connection. It's Yolanda's Wisher's Nature Girl.
Mm.
I worked with her on some projects. She's just an incredible thinker, and just works in a variety of creative practices, and former Philadelphia Poet Laureate. But she really has reminded me that root of the word curate is to care for. And I
Mm.
think that as much as we've kind of like resurfaced that term through our online use of like, digital curatorship or whatever. I still think with physical materials, there is another level that kind of gets at what you're sharing about, like the materiality of it, the artwork, and then ultimately just the way that we're like truly stewarding. I think that digital space, as so many of us know, is really difficult to navigate. Things are just, platforms change, websites go out of favor, whatever, and it's really hard to just hold on to it. And this does require a certain level of stewardship that may feel more challenging, but in the end, I think that it actually just is more intuitive in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did also forget a
Oh,
further thought.
go on.
The natural like physical media degrades.
Yeah.
And with records, it can happen very slowly over time. But like that's also personal. And so with streaming, your song is going to be identical every time you hear it, and it's never going to change. And some people like that. But with a record, if you scratch it accidentally, that scratch is always going to be there. And when you listen back to it, it's like hearing the ghost of yourself, right? And with the library collection, because it's shared, you're hearing other people's scratches.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the inheritedness of it again, and listening back through history. And,
Yeah,
sometimes newer and fancier isn't always better.
Word.
Right? And like, it doesn't need to be immaculate.
it's perfectly imperfect.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's the staying power right there.
Yeah. Which makes me think also about and you brought up kind of with the ghost, and I was on this very spiritual tip around like some of the records that I have in my collection. They have come from people that are in my family who are no longer here. They have the tradition of just kind of like passing things down, and for me it's like, wow, my ancestors touched these records. Like there's something so very powerful about that. It's like that I can't do that with the digital file, or even with some of my favorite records that I've come across when I've been digging is like where it's like, this is Joe's record. And I was like, well, who's Joe? Like I want to know about Joe. How do I find, and like there's stories that I know of folks who have, found out like who the people were that, had like put their addresses or like their names on the record. So there's, that community, that communal kind of element of, to it is just like so powerful as well. It's just like it's not just my music, it's our music. And that is something that totally gets lost. And it also makes me think about the transition from, a lot of these like analog recordings to digital, where I think I've read some places where things like you might have heard kind of like a low cough that made its way into a recording, and then it's like when it gets digitized, it's just like, oh no, we need to like make this perfect, and that we're gonna like get rid of those sort of things. And I'm like, no, like that,
Yeah.
like that makes it so, just like authentic to whatever was going on in the moment. And so that was standing out to me as well, just kind of like thinking about that as you both were just kind of illuminating your thoughts about that. So thank you for that. Um, you spoke a little bit about this part with the event that you did with like the 250 event, which it's like, whose stories are most at risk of like being lost, and all of this, and what role that libraries can play in like keeping these histories alive. And like that was one example, and I wonder if like there were others that you've kind of had thought of.
I also read a book like broke about this.
Yes.
It's indie artists, independent artists. Like the smaller you are, the less public you are, the shorter your reach, and the more like niche your audience is. Just like if there's less of you out there, there's less of you to preserve, and if you're with a big label, you're gonna have more records out. You're just naturally gonna like have more staying power. And so if you're an indie, like if you're a local Philly artist right now, where's your music? Is it in the library? How connected is the library to the community? Ideally a lot, right? So there's a really cool library initiative in some libraries to broaden the reach of local music digitally, I believe through Music At. It might also be Music Cat. Their logo has a cute cat in it. It's spelled like all caps music and then lowercase at. But they're physically like a database that's putting local indie artists in local communities, like working with libraries and getting them like web hosted through the library where people can then access their music digitally. And that's really cool. Most locally, I believe they're at a Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh. Right. And so that's digital, but like physically, I've been trying to add like local indie artists into our record collection, right? So I have a new like little library book truck and it has a sign saying like new and local records. And we have a record bin right on top that says local artists or locally produced or locally cut. And if you're a new artist, then your album ends up in there and people can come listen to it at the library and it's in our collection. And I've been working with like our cataloging team and they've cataloged the records. They're in our online database. And hopefully, in the future, people will be able to check them out. Ideally, we'd have like 2 copies. We'd have like one for reference for posterity to like keep it in the collection. And then like a second one for people to interact with and check out. But we'll work up to it.
Yeah. Awesome to hear that. Yeah.
I think for me, it's like the talk story element, the contextualization of albums. For me, like from a programming standpoint, and I think ultimately an exhibition standpoint, is what I don't want to have get lost. So, like the building that we're sitting in right now, the main library of the free library system here in Philly, is set to turn 100 years old next year.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, June 2nd, 1927. So we just had a meeting earlier this week to kind of think through like what are some music programming that we could do, not just around like, what has the last 100 years of sound looked like, but like what are people's personal relationships to sound over the last 100 years. And honestly, we kept bringing it back to vinyl because you can, with that particular medium, look at the last 100 years and have, something that may have been pressed just in the last month or two here in Philly all the way back to, when we first opened. And I think that's really exciting. And I think, again, there's like a way that people are drawn to a certain way of storytelling when an exhibition is curated with that in mind, so that it's not just this sort of like omnipresent kind of mono, I don't know what the word that I want to use it, but basically just like that there's this kind of anonymous interpreter that's telling you how you should best fill your vessel of knowledge, but that instead like we can all contribute to those stories and they could be beautifully different. They could have these like incredible Venn diagram overlaps and we don't know until we just start talking story.
Sort of related to that because I'm a librarian and so I just have to pull things out for you to look. There's a really cool piece of paper that says that when we turned, before we even opened in 1925, we were getting historical RCA record phonographs for the library for people to listen to on like day one. So like there have always been records and listening in the library.
So it's in the roots.
Exactly.
Yeah. This isn't new that we've been doing this. We've been here. I love it. Something that just came to mind. I think about and the past where there were library books that maybe I went long overdue. And,
We've all been there.
Uh,
I certainly have.
as staff, our books are very overdue.
yeah. And I think I'm like, yeah, maybe I have a couple from like old libraries, sorry, libraries. But it makes me think about, I'm like, ooh, I wonder like what records, like, do you have like list of like records that just went missing? Like, it's just like never got
Hmm.
brought back to the library or yeah.
Like yes and no,
Yeah.
because like right now we're not circulating, so it's not
Yeah.
current info.
Yeah.
But like all of our Michael Jackson ones
In the back in the day. Yeah.
took some walks, which is hard because now people are like, oh, I want to listen to him on vinyl. I'm like, I'm
To
so sorry we don't have him.
totally.
Do you want a CD? I could
Yeah.
offer you a CD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah. And
But
you
I
said it
think
was
there's
the 80s.
also
the 80s,
That
yeah.
that was the last time that you were
Like the late 80s.
the ladies was the last time you were letting them be checked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no,
Oh,
1981 for
oh,
checkouts.
early word.
It
Okay.
it's possible that they went walking regardless.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I love also the stories that I've been hearing that some of which are like documented of people basically in the neighborhood. People think of this sometimes as not a neighborhood library, but I'm like,
Mhm.
no, this is North Philly Library. So there's a project we're working on in conjunction with like citywide, really like national and international efforts to honor the 100th, what would be the 100th birthday of John Coltrane.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this beautiful write up that our colleague found around John Coltrane loving to walk from Strawberry Mansion to this library and listen to like Stravinsky on vinyl.
L-
And so, right? Am I getting the story
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So now I'm like looking through our records. We have like over 200 Stravinsky records,
yeah.
but and they're not all dated in our card catalog. So I'm just like looking through and I'm like, cool. Would this be from like the late 50s, early 60s?
Yeah. You're like, which one?
Is
Which
it
one is
like
it?
we can't say because like as librarians, it's not our job to keep track of what people are borrowing or looking
Right,
at.
Right.
So
right.
we can't say he exactly touched this one. But
Yeah.
like I'm looking, I'm like, hey, could he have come into contact with this?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not even about the like for me at least, it's not even about the like awestruck version of like he touched this. I'm more connected to like that when it comes to like my mom who passed away in 2020. But for him, I think it's just reminding us and the communities that we serve and are also a part of that um this was a place to like nerd out and get scholarly, and you just don't know like what's going to come out of that. Like we love the legacy of John Coltrane, but there are like the future John Coltranes that are like
Right.
downstairs right now listening to stuff and like being inspired and taking those inspirations in their own directions. And for me, that's like everything. And yeah, like, books are late, things don't get returned. But I think honestly, for the way that this space is created and how long it's lasted, like public libraries have really had their own staying power. I think we're just going to see that continue. Although it is a shame about the Michael Jackson records.
That's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get some more eventually.
Yeah, let's get some more.
We'll get some
Totally. We're definitely gonna get some Coltrane stuff in for the 100th.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is fine.
Donations.
Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. But I thank you so much for that John Coltrane reference because it made me think about like my question, which is like, is there a record or collection that you've come across that's opened up a much bigger story about a person or a community or a moment in time? And like you were already on that wave where it's just like, oh, you're hearing this detail and you're like, wait, let me like backtrack. Then like, oh, which one could there have? Which one could it have been? Are there any other kind of like stories? Maybe not to that degree, but maybe something kind of speaks to that question.
Yes, this is the question that I said I was also answering earlier with the Wendy Carlos album.
Yeah.
But Wendy Carlos, I was just like, wait, so there's just like this really cool trans woman pioneering electronic music in the 1960s, and she's a shy, introverted cat lady. What? Who was like really unsure about doing this because of the time and also because of her temperament. Like, wow. But then like just diving through the rabbit hole of that and then realizing like a week ago, I was talking to my dad about this and he's like, oh yeah, I have Wendy Carlos. I have her like her Switched on Bach album in the collection. And I was like, so you mean I actually had access to this my entire life?
That's amazing.
And I didn't even know it until I got here to the library and just discovered it on my own. So
Wow.
I had to laugh about that, so I didn't cry about it a bit. But yeah.
How powerful. Like,
Was
again,
there all along.
that connected to share, like, wait, so Wendy was always there.
Yes, I just didn't know it.
But
she was waiting.
That part.
And then I stumbled upon her.
Yeah, no, she's like, whenever you're ready, I am here for you.
Right? Or even like, she did a lot of cool horror movie soundtracks. So
Yes.
she did A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
I definitely watched A Clockwork Orange. So I'd heard her. I just hadn't known it.
Yeah, that soundtrack is like stunning.
Yeah.
I need to listen to that record.
Yeah.
Suzanne, anything kind of stand? I know you brought up John Coltrane, but I wondered if
so
there
hard
was
to
anything.
choose, honestly. So hard to choose. I think honestly, I'm just so enamored of this collection that we have here because I think over the years that I've been here, I had kind of heard about some of the attrition of the collection, not understanding how much was still truly here. And I think it was in large part because there just wasn't an actual dedicated staff person that was like, I want to
focus on this.
Yeah, I want to focus on this. I want to make sense of it. I want to take it into the future. And so I haven't looked like, I'm like, what, a third of the way through browsing, something like that. But yeah, for me, it's just like opening up a whole world. And I think like one of the things that's fun about thinking about Coltrane is like, he had his own personal library, so many of us do. And yet that's what's like really beautiful to me is like learning more about people's personal collections and then also like what exists in these kind of spaces. So I think it'll be really neat to see how this collection grows and shapes. And I mean, I guess maybe I would just pick Yolanda's record as one that I'm excited to listen to in this space and potentially see if she wants to do something with, because she's been, just a real force of nature in Philly in terms of just encouraging us to think and be creative in our own ways.
Is there, as we're beginning to come to a close, I am wondering, is there anything that like, more that you would like folks to know about like what is happening with like the work with the music department of the Free Library of Philadelphia, or like things that you're getting very excited about, or just, I mean, because this audience that we're speaking to, most of them don't live in Philadelphia. And so, we're kind of giving them this slice of like, oh, this is how it can look like, and I'm very excited that they're getting to meet you to get some sense of like, oh yeah, this is how we're doing it. But yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, is there anything more that you feel that could be useful, interesting for folks to know?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you like our whole department overview because records and CDs are just a very small part of it.
Yeah.
So the music department, we actually cover like all aspects of music and dance for the entire Philadelphia library system, which is 54 branches. We have books on music and dance history, biographies, like theory, choreography. We have music scores, which other people sometimes call sheet music. So like how to play music, the music you can play, recordings, CDs of music that you can borrow and check out and listen to. We have musical instruments that you can check out and play, just like a library card, just like a book. You check it out on your library card. You can borrow it for 3 weeks, return it to the library when you're done. You can teach yourself how to play the guitar. We have like databases that have the instructional videos to break down how to teach you how to play guitar or piano. We have a chamber music collection, which is the individual part scores for like orchestral group music playing, chamber music, which is like smaller groups than orchestras. So we have from like 1 to I believe 10 instrumentations of that. And for those ones, we do check them out to people all over the world and all over the United States. You don't need to have a library card with us. You can just send us an email. You can email us at music@freelibrary.org. And if you're interested in playing some cool chamber music, we will send it to you in the mail. You know, the loan periods for those can be like 4 to 6 months is average, but we'll do special loans for you if you're far away. And with the vinyl records, I'm working on starting a pilot collection called Vinyl to Go. We're going to check out 2 records to people at a time to start with. You have to have a teen or an adult card, which a teen card starts at 12. So you'll be able to borrow 2 records at a time for 1 week. And those ones you'll have to return back to us here in the music department, not a branch and not a Dropbox. We're not quite ready with it yet, but it's going to come soon. I'm very excited about it. We're slowly, gradually accepting limited donations. Anything that is donated needs to meet our like regular collection development criteria, which is available on the Free Library of Philadelphia's website, freelibrary.org. We're accepting like very small quantities right now because we just don't have space. Hopefully more space will open up. You know, like as people are borrowing things, then it makes room for more things to sit in the library. But you can also send us an email if you're interested about that. Please do not just bring me records and stick them on our desk because I can't promise we will take them. But you can email us again at music@freelibrary.org if you're curious about donating some records, especially if you're a local indie artist.
Yeah, awesome. And I know you are both on socials with like the different work that you're doing with the free libraries. That's correct?
Yeah, I can share. So kind of like what Jane was discussing, like I'm always open to collaboration. I do about a dozen exhibits a year. And I do work across the library system. So if you're in Philadelphia or you have roots in Philadelphia and you want to do something in the neighborhood library that you grew up going to, there's always a conversation there. And I'd say reaching out at free library exhibits on Instagram is a really good way. And then I can follow up by sharing my email address and even just setting up a time for you to come through and check out what we have. We have mid-century modern cases that were installed in 1954 that exist to this day. I've been refurbishing them. Hopefully we'll have some, some vinyl on display at some point in the next couple of years in there. And just really, looking at ways to continue to build spaces that allow for the kind of storytelling and interpretation that comes from this work that we're so enthusiastic about.
Unlike Suzanna, I'm mainly in the music department most days. That's my home base. Yeah. Sometimes you can find me downstairs in the teen department, hanging out with the teens, doing teen music listening programs. But on social media, you can follow the music department at Free Library Music. Our logo is a little sign of a keyboard. Yeah. We're not super duper active over there, but if there's an event, we share like what's happening. When there's news, we share about it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So Jane and Suzanna, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today. And I thank you so much for sharing with me, with the Women in Vinyl audience, about the work that you are doing to just bring music to the community of Philadelphia and beyond. And that physical media aspect is just so so necessary to preserve that history. And again, I thank you so much, and sharing also how folks can be in contact with you. Again, my name is L'Oreal Porcia McCollum, and I've been your guest host for today. You can connect with me at FKA Lola Kinks on Insta. I thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us for our next episode and beyond. And thanks so much for listening. And bye.
Check out the Women in Vinyl book at your local library.
Yeah. Shouts out. Absolutely. Oh, bye for now. And thank you both so
Thanks
much.
for having us.
Bye. Happy summer.
Yes. Bye.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.